The Sobraon was built by Alexander Hall & Co. of Aberdeen to the order of Shaw, Lowther, Maxton & Co., the T-Clipper owners. She was the largest composite ship ever built, being constructed of solid teak with iron beams and frames. This form of construction gave the ship great structural strength and provided more space for cargo. The lower section of her three masts were also iron, while higher sections of her masts and the lower yard on all masts were steel. As such, she was just as strong aloft as she was in her hull. Originally, she was designed to have auxiliary steam power, but this feature was discarded, and the ship was completed as a square-rig sailing ship. The Sobraon was registered at 2,131 tons. She was 317 feet long overall and 272 feet between perpendiculars. Her beam was 40 feet wide and her hold 27 feet deep. She could carry 3,500 tons of cargo. The ship, named after the Battle of Sobraon, was launched on the 17th of April, 1866. On her first two voyages, she carried sky sails, but these were found to make her rather crank and so were done away with. In the 80s, she followed the fashion and was fitted with double top-gallant yards on her fore and main masts. With all sails set, she had a spread of just 2 acres of canvas. A.G. Elmsley, who served in her for 11 years under his father, Captain James Elmsley, from apprentice to chief officer, gave the following account of her sailing qualities. A glance at the perfect lines of the ship in dry dock would be quite sufficient to show there was nothing to stop her going through the water. And I can honestly say that during my 11 years, I never saw any other sailing ship pass her in a breeze, either on a wind or before it. The fact of the Sobraon being first intended for an auxiliary steamer and having the 2 stern posts, the space between which was filled up with solid timber, gave her a perfect run, and her bows were as fine as any yacht's. Runs of over 300 knots when running down the easting were frequent. On one occasion, over 1,000 knots were covered in 3 days, and over 2,000 in a week. 340 knots in the 24 hours was the best run made. I have seen over 16 knots reeled off by the log. This was with the wind some 2 or 3 points on the quarter, which was her best sailing point. On a wind and sailing within 5.5 points, she could do her 7 to 8 knots. Sobraon sailed from Plymouth on her maiden voyage on the 21st of November, 1866. She arrived in Sydney in just 75 days, clearly demonstrating her superior sailing qualities. When the ship left on her homeward passage to London in April 1867, she carried 200 passengers and over 5,000 bales of wool. At the time, that was the largest cargo to have left Sydney in a single vessel. On her first 5 voyages from 1866 to 1871, Sobraon sailed to Sydney, and after that, from 1872 to 1891 to Melbourne, always returning via the Cape of Good Hope instead of the Horn. Her fastest trip to Sydney was 73 days and to Melbourne 68 days. On the latter passage, she sighted Cape Otway on the morning of the 60th day out, but then had light variable winds, which spoilt what promised to be a 61-day passage. Most of her outward passages were between 70 and 80 days. But it must be remembered that she was never driven hard out of consideration for her passengers. Lowther and Maxton only owned her for a few years, and from the first she loaded as one of Devitt and Moore's monthly line of packets to Australia, the latter firm buying her outright about 1870. On her maiden voyage, the Sobraon was commanded by Captain Kyle. In 1867, he was succeeded by Captain James Elmsley, who had her for the rest of her active career, from 1867 to 1891, a period of 24 years. No greater proof of the popularity of the Sobraon and her captain can be given than the length of time both officers and men stayed in her. Some of them served on her during the whole time that the ship was afloat. The Sobraon's crew usually consisted of captain, 4 officers, 8 apprentices, carpenter, sailmaker, boatswain, engineer, 2 boatswain's mates, 26 ABs, 4 OSs, 2 boys, 16 stewards, and 2 stewardesses. Total all told equals 69. Only 1 voyage was made in each year, the sailing date from London always being the latter end of September and from Australia early in February. From her immense carrying capacity, the cargo was invariably a good source of revenue. Owing to her regular sailings, there was never any difficulty in getting a full hold. And this applied especially to the homeward run, when her cargo consisted chiefly of wool and wheat. It was, however, as a crack passenger ship to Australia that the Sobraon was most celebrated, as she never formed one of the fleet which raced home to be in time for the February wool sales. Indeed, on the homeward run, she usually touched at Cape Town and always at St. Helena, these breaks in the passage being very popular with passengers. At St. Helena, the ship made a regular stay of about 3 days, and this visit was as much looked forward to by the inhabitants of the island as by the Sobraon's passengers. As a rule, about 100 tons of cargo, consisting of flour, corn, preserved meat, etc., were landed there, and occasionally a few bullocks were taken there from Cape Town. Sobraon's passenger accommodation was unequaled for a sailing ship. She only had a short poop, but her first-class saloon reached from right aft to within 20 feet of the foremast and was 200 feet in length. The second-class saloon took up the remaining space in the 'tween decks, with the exception of 20 feet in the eyes of the ship, which was bulk-headed off as a storeroom and sail locker. The number of first-class passengers on the outward trip averaged close on 90, with 40 in the second saloon. Fresh food was obviously a necessity for the class of passenger carried, and the following livestock were carried on each passage: 3 bullocks, 90 sheep, 50 pigs, 3 cows for milking, and over 300 geese, fowls, and ducks. Fresh water, and plenty of it, was always procurable, a large condenser running every alternate day. There was an ice chamber, also, in which several tons of ice were stored. Although the Sobraon has survived several severe storms in which her men were washed overboard and has come close to burning up at sea on several occasions, she came through her 25 years active service with singularly little damage at the hands of the elements. On the 14th of October 1890, Sobraon sailed on her final voyage to Australia. She reached Melbourne on the 4th of January 1891, was sold later that month to the New South Wales government, then towed to Sydney. In the hands of the colony's government, Sobraon was assigned to the State Welfare Department and refitted for use as a reformatory ship, where delinquent boys were trained in the skills for a maritime career. Moored off Cockatoo Island and operated under the designation Nautical School Ship Sobraon, over 4,000 boys were hosted and trained across a 20-year period. In 1910, the Naval Defence Act was passed, and in October 1911, the adoption of the title Royal Australian Navy was authorized by King George V. This same year saw the launching on the Clyde of HMAS Australia and the purchasing of the Sobraon by the Commonwealth of Australia. Sobraon was refitted and on 25 April 1912, under the name HMAS Tingira, an Aboriginal word for open sea, was commissioned as the first naval training ship in the Royal Australian Navy, with the motto, "Learn or Leave." She became the training ship to thousands of young boys who chose the Navy as a career under the Department of the Navy's Boy Enlistment Scheme. Tingira did not head to sea for training, but remained moored at Rose Bay for the next 15 years. Nearby Line Park was used for parade, rifle, and field gun training. The first intake of boys took place between 1 and 28th of June 1912, and at the date of HMS Tingira's decommissioning in 1927, some 3,168 young boys had had their initial training on board. The boys were aged between 14 years, 6 months, and 16 years of age, and were required to serve 7 years in the Navy after the age of 18. In 1929, Tingira was bought by W.M. Ford, a prominent North Sydney boat builder, and floated outside his boat shed in Barry's Bay, where she served as coal hulk, stores ship, and for a short time as a hostel for the destitute men of Sydney. Ford died in 1935, and in 1936, Major Freer, a retired British Army officer, and Mrs. Louisa Ankin negotiated to purchase Tingira for the sum of £2,600. And a company was formed to convert the ship into a floating museum, but because of financial difficulties, this development failed. 2 years later, the ship was sold to a shipbreaker by mortgagees. The final breaking up of the old Sobraon was delayed until 1941, when the ship's component materials, iron, steel, brass, copper, and her heavy timbers were needed for Australia's war effort. Following the end of World War II, there was a worldwide movement to preserve some of the great square-rig sailing ships of the 19th century. Had the old Sobraon survived for just a few more years, she, almost certainly, would have been restored to sailing condition after the war.